The sunlight poured through the tall church windows like a quiet blessing, illuminating faces filled with joy and love. The music swelled, and my son, Adrian, stood at the altar, his smile wide and nervous. I sat in the second row, trying to hold back tears that came not just from pride, but from something deeper, something buried for decades. Because that's when I saw her. Standing across the aisle, in a pale blue dress that shimmered like memory itself, was her, Clara. The woman I had loved more than life itself, the woman I thought I'd never see again. For a moment, the noise faded. The crowd blurred. Time folded upon itself like the pages of an old, forgotten book, and suddenly I was 24 again, staring at the girl who once promised forever. 25 years had passed, but her eyes, they hadn't changed. I didn't expect to see Clara again, not here, not now, not ever. I'd built a life after her absence, brick by brick, as carefully as one stacks stones to keep out the flood. But seeing her there at my son's wedding, her soft smile framed by silver-streaked hair, cracked every wall I'd built around my heart. Adrian had never mentioned her. Why would he? To him, she was just his fiancée's aunt, someone distant but warm, someone who sent thoughtful gifts and kind words. He had no idea that his father once loved her more than he thought humanly possible. The ceremony moved on, and I tried to focus, the vows, the laughter, the applause, but my thoughts kept drifting. Every word of love they spoke reminded me of the words Clara and I never got to say. Every look between my son and his bride echoed a time when I believed love could conquer everything. But life had proven otherwise. After the ceremony, the reception began in a sunlit garden behind the church. Tables were lined with white roses and glass lanterns that glowed like captured stars. Guests mingled, music played, and I moved through the crowd with a practiced smile. Then I felt a gentle tap on my shoulder. "Ethan," she said softly. Her voice hadn't changed. I turned and there she was, close enough to see the tiny lines at the corners of her eyes, the soft tremble in her smile. "It's been a long time." I nodded, unsure what to say. The last time I saw her, she was walking away from me at a train station in spring, her eyes red from crying, my fingers empty and cold. 25 years, I murmured. 25 years, she repeated, and then she smiled sadly. "You haven't changed." Those words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were true, I had changed, in ways she couldn't see, but because for a heartbeat, I wanted to believe her. That maybe beneath the wrinkles and regrets, I was still the man who once waited outside her art studio with coffee in hand, dreaming of forever. We talked. Slowly, awkwardly at first. About life, about where we'd been. She'd moved away, married briefly, then lost her husband to illness years later. She'd returned to town only recently, staying near her niece Adrian's bride. I told her about my late wife, about raising Adrian alone after she passed when he was 8. Our words were polite, measured, but beneath them, a current of unspoken things stirred restlessly. As the day unfolded, we found ourselves drawn together again, orbiting the same invisible gravity. I noticed how her laughter still rose like sunlight, how she still tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. When the music slowed and couples began to dance, she hesitated before asking quietly, "Would you?" And so, I did. We danced under the bright afternoon sky. The air smelled of roses and distant rain. The band played a soft tune, something timeless. I held her hand gently, afraid that too much pressure might break the fragile magic of the moment. Her head rested near my shoulder, and for the first time in decades, I felt something awaken, a warmth I'd long buried under years of loneliness and loss, but behind that warmth, guilt flickered. Because as much as I longed for that feeling, part of me feared it. What right did I have to feel alive again when the past had ended so painfully? That night, when the wedding ended, we stood near the garden's edge, watching guests drift away like petals in the wind. "I didn't expect to see you," I said quietly. "Neither did I," she replied, her eyes soft but searching. "But maybe we were meant to. Some things circle back when we're finally ready to face them." Her words lingered in the air long after she left. That night, I couldn't sleep. Memories came rushing back, the day we met in college, her paint-stained hands, the way she used to hum when she worked. I remembered the letters we exchanged when she moved abroad to study art. I remembered the promise we made to wait for each other. And I remembered the silence that came after she stopped writing. It had taken me years to forgive her for leaving. But now, standing at this strange crossroads of past and present, I realized I'd never truly stopped loving her. Days passed after the wedding. I thought our meeting was fate's cruel reminder of what I'd lost. But one afternoon, as I sat on a park bench reading, I saw her again. She was painting the same park where we'd first met. She waved, and something inside me whispered, "Go." We started meeting there often. Two old souls rediscovering pieces of themselves they thought were gone. We talked about our lives, our mistakes, our children, our fears. I learned that she'd never stopped thinking of me, even after she married. "He knew," she said once, her voice trembling. "He knew there was a part of me that had belonged to someone else long before we met." I didn't know whether to feel comforted or broken by that truth. But I stayed. Because every conversation felt like breathing again after years underwater. One sunny afternoon, she showed me a painting she'd been working on, a scene of two figures sitting beneath a blooming tree, one handing the other a cup of coffee. "Do you remember?" she asked. "Of course, I did. It was the morning we fell in love. As we stood there, the years between us seemed to fade. I used to wonder what you'd look like now," she said softly. "I imagined you older, maybe grayer, but still with that same look in your eyes." I was right. I smiled faintly. "And I used to wonder what I'd say if I ever saw you again." And I looked at her, at the light dancing in her eyes, at the years we'd both survived. "I'd tell you I forgive you. And that I'm glad you're here." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve that." "Maybe not," I said gently. "But forgiveness isn't about who deserves it, it's about who needs it." That day, we didn't say much more. We just sat there in the sunlight, two lives touched again by grace. For the first time in years, I felt peace, quiet, healing peace. Weeks passed, and our friendship deepened into something neither of us dared name but both understood. It wasn't the fiery, reckless love of youth. It was something steadier, warmer, a love built not on promises but on understanding. Then, one morning, I found a note on my doorstep. It was from Clara E. "Ethan, thank you for letting me see what kindness looks like after all these years. You've given me back something I thought I lost, a reason to smile. I'm leaving for a few months to help at an art retreat by the sea. But this time, I'm not running away. When I come back, if you still want to, let's start again." Clara. I stood there for a long time, holding that note. The wind lifted the edges like wings. She was leaving again, but not in the same way. This time, there was a promise hidden in her words, and for the first time, I didn't feel afraid. Because sometimes love doesn't need to end or begin. Sometimes it just waits, quietly, patiently, until we're ready to open our hearts again. Months later, she returned. We met again at the same park, the same bench. She looked radiant, peaceful in a way I hadn't seen before. I smiled and handed her a coffee, just like the old days. She laughed softly. "You still remember how I take it?" "Always," I said, and as the sun dipped low behind the trees, I realized something beautiful. Life doesn't always give us what we want when we want it. But if we're lucky, it gives us a second chance to make peace, to forgive, to love again. So, when she whispered again, "You haven't changed," I finally understood what she meant. Maybe I hadn't changed in the ways that mattered most, the capacity to love, to forgive, to believe, and as we sat there together, watching the day fade into gold, I knew this time, I wouldn't let her go. Not because I was afraid to lose her, but because we had both finally found our way home. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Every story here is a reminder that life always offers another chance to love, forgive, and begin again.